In this part, we will set up our own Kali Linux virtual lab where you can perform the pen testing and the ethical hacking activity. But if you know already how to build the virtual lab, you can skip this part and watch the next part. Before we start the virtual machine lab setup, let's talk about the prerequisite for the lab setup. First, you have to download the Kali Linux operating system from the official website and choose the according to the your OS architecture, whether it is 64-bit or the 32-bit, while you choose the Kali Linux download. Second requirement is download the VM platform where our virtual machine will be hosted and run. There are many VM platforms available in the market. It could be a VMware Workstation, VirtualBox, or the Microsoft's Hyper-V. I'll be using the VMware Workstation to set up my lab. You have to download it from the official website and installation is very simple. Just follow the instruction and complete the installation setup. Third requirement is the at least 40 GB hard drive and the 4 GB RAM is available so that we can allocate the same to the Kali Linux operating system. Now let's move to the practical scenario. Upon starting up the VMware Workstation, go to the file and select the new virtual machine. When you have the options, select custom advanced for the virtual machine configuration, as is this will allow us to have more controls or the creation of the VM. The next screen is virtual machine hardware compatibility, which we have used the Workstation 15. This allows for more users to benefit from the Kali out of the box. On the next screen, we have to specify the path of the Kali Linux ISO that we have downloaded from the official website. We select browse and navigate to the location of the ISO file and click on the next button. On the next screen, when you see the guest operating system screen, select the Linux and the latest version of the Debian. In our case, it's a Debian 9 and we are going to be use the 64-bit image to install the Kali Linux. When you are done, click on the next. The next screen is virtual machine name, where you have to provide the name of your virtual machine and location where all VM files will be stored and click next. The next screen is processors configuration. Here we can define how many resources we give to the VM. We selected 2 processor and 2 core per processor, giving you a total of 4 cores. You may wish to use more or less depending on your system's configuration. Click next when you are done. Memory for the virtual machine. In this section where we can define how much RAM to use. Again, the higher amount of RAM, the more application can be performed well and increase the performance. We selected the 4 GB and it is enough to perform our task, but you may wish to use more or less depending on your system's configuration and it may direct impact on the performance. In this part, we have to set the network configuration. We select the bridge networking that allows virtual machine to direct access to an external Ethernet network, and the guest OS must have its own IP address on the external network. However, this can be changed easily even when the VM is powered on. Next is the IO controller type. We accept the default value of the LSI logic. Next is the virtual disk type. We will go with the default option SCSI and hit next. This screen allows you to create a new virtual disk or existing if you have, or you can select the physical disk, but in our case we will go with the option 1 and create a new virtual disk because it is a fresh installation. This section allows us to define the size of the virtual disk. Minimum is 20 GB but recommended is the 40. if you are not running with the low storage amount, and select the split virtual disk into the multiple files so that it easier to move the VM to the another location if required. On the next screen, it will ask to store the disk file. We accept the default value which has been defined from our VM name earlier in the setup process. Click next. In this final screen for the VM setup wizard, which gives us an overview of these settings we picked. When we are fine with what's shown to us, so we can press the finish, and if you want to modify the hardware, you can do it by the customize the hardware button to do that. Let's finish and start the installation process, and it is visible in library section. Now select the newly created virtual machine and click on the power on this virtual machine button to start the installation process and maximize the screen. We will be greeted with the Kali Linux boot screen. Here we have to choose the graphical install and hit enter. Now select the preferred language and click on the continue button. This step will be specifying out the geographical location. We then click on the continue button. Next option is to select the preferred keyboard and click on continue. Then it will load the install component from the installation media, detecting the network hardware, and try to assign a IP using the DHCP. This is prompted to enter a host name for the system. We have taken the Digital Conda as our host name. Click on the continue button after entering the host name. Providing a domain name is an optional. Specify if you have a domain server. I'll leave this blank and continue. This section is to set the root user's password, and it will be a system administrator account, and using this account you can perform any administrative task on the Kali Linux, so make sure you remember it and set the strong password. Then we will have to set our time zone in this step. When you are done, click on the continue button. In this step, the installer will review and analyze our disk and offer us 4 choices as shown in the screen. We will be using the entire disk, hence we will choose the first option and continue. After selecting the partition method, we need to select the disk to be partitioned. We have only one, so select and continue. Based on our needs, we can either keep all the directories in a single disk or choose to have the different partition for the directories. If we are not sure about the partition, it is safest to go with the option all files in one partition and click on continue. This is the review page where we can analyze the option we have selected and check for the one last time our configuration changes are correct or not, because once we click on the continue, the installer will get to work and irreversible changes will be made. Here we have almost finished our installation. As the major steps are done, click on continue. In this step, we will configure network mirror and we will need to enter the proxy information if any. Select yes here, and that will allow us to install the packages from the Kali repository and continue. In this step, we will be performed to install the grub, select yes and continue. Finally, we have completed the Kali Linux installation. Click on the continue button to reboot the system. Now system start booting and very soon we will get the login screen. Here enter the root in username and the password that we have set during the installation time and hit enter to login. Hope I was able to help you in set up a virtual lab of the Kali Linux using the VMware workstation. You may ask any question or if you have any issues.